Thanks, guys. Good morning, everybody. Fox News alert now. This will be a pivotal day in Washington, D.C. President Trump gives a speech this morning to the Conservative Values Voters Summit. No sitting president's ever done that before. This amid two major breaking stories. The president strikes a critical blow on Obamacare. And today is decision day on the Iran nuclear deal. So there's a lot popping already as we say hello on a Friday. I'm Bill Hemmer, live at America's Newsroom. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Bill. I'm Sandra Smith. His address comes as the president announced overnight he is undoing federal subsidies to insurance companies that participate in the Obamacare exchanges, a move already drawing heavy fire from Democrats.
Well, he was up early this morning around 5:30 tweeting this. The Democrats' Obamacare was imploding, he writes. Massive subsidy payments to their pet insurance companies has stopped. Dems should call me to fix. End tweet.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is live on the North Lawn on a busy Friday. John, how much does this change Obamacare?
It will likely change it a lot. In fact, the president appears to be throwing a hand grenade into the middle of the Obamacare insurance markets by announcing that he's going to end the $7 billion in subsidies to health insurance companies that participate on the so-called exchanges. With open enrollment coming up in just 3 weeks' time now, this could have a profound effect because by ending the subsidies, the president gives license to a lot of insurance companies to end their contract with the federal government and maybe pull out of those marketplaces. The White House, though, in announcing the decision late last night, said that the courts have found this to be illegal in a statement saying, quote, the bailout of insurance companies through these unlawful payments is yet another example of how the previous administration abused taxpayer dollars and skirted the law to prop up a broken system. And the president is certainly making no apologies for taking this action, tweeting this morning, quote, Obamacare is a broken mess piece by piece. We will now begin the process of giving America the great health care it deserves. The announcement on subsidies follows the president's signing of an executive order yesterday to begin the process of allowing small businesses to create associations and buy health insurance across state lines to give many people access to what's called short-term limited duration insurance. Democrats were critical of the executive order. They doubled down in their criticism over the elimination of subsidies. In a joint statement, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi saying, quote, it is a spiteful act of vast, pointless sabotage leveled at working families and the middle class in every corner of America. Make no mistake about it, Trump will try to blame the Affordable Care Act, but this will fall on his back, and he will pay the price for it. Well, so much for the budding cooperation between the president and the Democratic leadership. Sandra.
From Obamacare to Iran, as we mentioned, a busy day. The president expected to make an announcement there on Iran. What do we expect?
12:45, the president will make a speech outlining his Iran policy going forward. The president has decided that he will not recertify the Iran deal over what's called INARA. This is a bill passed by Congress that requires the Iran nuclear deal to be recertified every 90 days. By not recertifying it, it means that the U.S. will still stay in what's called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. It leaves that intact, but it kicks the Iran deal over to Congress to figure out what to do with it. And the president will urge Congress to enact tough new controls on Iran that go well beyond the nuclear deal, the violation of any one of which could trigger the reimposition of sanctions. Congress basically has three choices here, and there they are on the screen. They could follow the president's lead and put together this comprehensive plan of action. They could reimpose sanctions unilaterally, or they could do nothing. The third option is one that a lot of members of Congress would want to pursue. Any way it works out, though, the president gets points with his base because he promised during the campaign and as president that he was going to do something about the Iran deal. He has done what he can now. He's kicked it over to Congress, so then it's up to Congress to figure out politically how they want to handle it. We could hear more, though, by the way, about Obamacare when the president speaks to the Values Voters Summit in just a few minutes' time. So much for getting an early start of the weekend, Sandra.
Hope you drank your coffee this morning. John Roberts, thank you.
You're taking notes, too, along the way. Latest take now, Katie Pavlich, editor of townhall.com, and a Fox News contributor. And Katie, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good to see you. Happy Friday.
Thank you. You as well. First on Obamacare and all the moves that have happened this week. The reaction's been predictable, I think you could argue. Yeah. Democrats are saying you're punishing the people who need it the most. What is the hand he's trying to force with these two actions? What is the outcome the president's looking for?
Well, the president said he wanted to get rid of Obamacare. It's something he campaigned on. But I actually believe, and just based on the conversations that I've had with folks who are experts in the area of Obamacare and these subsidies, this is an issue of the president putting the power back in Congress's hands where it belongs. It is illegal for any president to spend the subsidy money in the way that the Obama administration set up. And that is just a fact of where we are here. So as President Trump has done in the past, he is saying this is not the power of the executive branch. This is not something I'm legally allowed to do. Attorney General Jeff Sessions said as much this morning on Fox and Friends. I'm going to kick it back over to Congress where it belongs. And if these subsidies want to stay, they're the ones who have to approve it.
Yeah, I mean, the government subsidies, they're saying they're not legal in the state lines that was ordered in the executive order. It's very interesting now how they can try and reshape this law. We'll keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, what a briefing yesterday. Secretary Kelly, Chief of Staff, a lot of folks can't remember this has ever happened before, walked into the briefing room and said this to reporters based on what he sees on television and reads in the newspaper.
I will give you the benefit of the doubt that you are operating off of contacts, leaks, whatever you call them. But I would just offer to you the advice I'd say, maybe develop some better sources.
I mean, so dry and some really catchy one-liners. I think the bigger picture, Katie, if you thought the West Wing was in flames, he walked in that room to tell you it was not and things were under control. How did you think it played?
Over the past 2 weeks, we've seen, two of President Obama's cabinet officials, the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and now the Chief of Staff John Kelly, coming out and reaffirming what their role is, that they're not going anywhere, that they're there to serve the American people and the president. Yesterday, John Kelly essentially did the same thing. He said, I'm not getting fired today. I'm pretty sure the president's not going to let me go. I'm not going to quit. And by the way, my job isn't to control the president. My job is to make sure he has the best information available to him on a daily basis so he can make the best decisions. So we've seen that over the past 2 weeks, them coming out in their own words and reaffirming their own positions and where they stand rather than just the president having to do it. I think that there's some powerful statements there when it's the person themselves coming out in defense of their own position and in defense of the administration as well.
Thank you, Katie. And he doesn't mind tweeting.
No, he does not, apparently.
POTUS. Thank you, Katie Pavlich. Have a great weekend.
Talk to you soon. Thanks, Bill.
We'll have much more on Obamacare and Iran coming up at the bottom of the hour. Texas Senator Ted Cruz will join us in studio with his reaction to what is shaping up to be a very, very busy day in Washington.
Very much looking forward to that. The tax plan, what happens, what's the time schedule for him, how does he view it? And also, he's been knee-deep in the health care issue for years now, so we'll see what he thinks of all this.
A lot going on. We also want to ask him about his state and how they're doing after Harvey.
Great point.
All right, wildfires is still raging in Northern California as the numbers are staggering. At least 31 people are dead, and now authorities are trying to locate about 400 people who remain missing. The wildfires leveling entire neighborhoods, including this home of a firefighter.
I was here for most of the day yesterday, sifting through stuff, looking for that. It's not necessarily the monetary value; it's the emotional connection that we have to that, and these other things can be replaced.
Fox Business Network's Robert Gray is live in Napa, California, at the fairgrounds with the latest. Robert.
Hey, Senator, that's right. We are at the Napa County Fairgrounds, and this is a staging ground for hundreds, if not thousands, of firefighters here. The number yesterday was only about 400 or 500. They're telling me this morning, though, that they've had many more folks coming in overnight. Lance, if you'll pan over to his right a little bit, you'll see where they're fueling up and getting ready to go back out to battle the blazes here. We've got basically at least 24 fire trucks lined up here to fuel up, to head back out to battle the blazes, because the Atlas blaze, the largest one so far, is only about 7% contained in the Atlas fire. CAL FIRE saying it has burned more than 43,000 acres, including the area where we were yesterday, where the homes were totally almost wiped out, an entire neighborhood. So we're continuing to follow this story, and you've got folks coming in from at least 9 different states, Sandra, as far away as North Carolina, and from up and down California. You'll see the different cities along the names of the trucks here. Lots of emergency vehicles here as well staging it. You mentioned there's 31 dead, as many as 900 people have been reported missing. They found several hundred of those. They're not sure if some of those are duplicates or not. And officials last night with a grim revelation that, of course, many people, they're going to have a difficult time identifying. So they're going to have to continue to work to do that through different methods. We've seen more than 20,000 people evacuated forced evacuations in some communities. Others have told me they're voluntarily evacuating their families, even as they remain at work. And certainly the hot topic from the grocery store to Starbucks to everywhere, everyone's talking about what they're doing with their families. The hotel I'm staying in actually allowed people to bring their pets in who had been evacuated, Sandra, so that they would be able to have their dogs there. And the folks at the hotel saying normally they wouldn't do it, but obviously at this time, neighbors are helping each other out. Back to you.
Wow, so many stories coming out of that, and it continues. Robert Gray, live for us on the ground in Napa. Thank you.
You wonder, it's just been going on and how deep and far it runs. Wow, our best to them. Strange twist now in the hours after this American woman and her family were freed from years of captivity in Afghanistan. This story runs deep. Why the husband initially refused to get on board an American plane. We have details on that this morning.
And new fallout this morning surrounding the Harvey Weinstein sex assault scandal. Actress Rose McGowan now putting the head of Amazon studio on notice as Weinstein speaks out again.
Also, Republicans, they've made a vow to get tax reform on the books. Will they do it? The man in the middle of all this is Congressman Kevin Brady. We'll talk to him live about all that next.
You can get as much as a 40% tax reduction. Again, it's the largest tax reduction in the history of our country.
President Trump announcing the success of a dramatic rescue in Pakistan to free an American woman, her Canadian husband, and their 3 children. The couple was abducted 5 years ago by a terror group which has ties to the Taliban, and their children were born in captivity. But sources say the husband initially refused to board the aircraft to leave the country to come back to the USA, afraid he'll be arrested due to his previous marriage. Turns out his ex-wife is the sister of an inmate at Guantanamo Bay. More on all of this later this hour.
Half this country is living paycheck to paycheck. And if that means we've got to stay here till Christmas to give them the relief they need and deserve, then tough, we will do that.
Speaker Paul Ryan throwing down the gauntlet on tax reform, vowing that the House will not rest until the job is done. Well, what about that job? Texas Congressman Kevin Brady, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, you've got the job of writing this bill, sir, so thank you for your time. And I know you're back home in Texas, so we're going to get to all that in a moment here. But first on taxes. With this congressional makeup, especially in the House, what do you think Americans can expect from tax reform?
Yeah, first, the ability to keep more of what you earn. I think American families are overtaxed at every level. And so being able to keep more of what you earn is critical. Having a simple, fair system, a postcard-style system 9 out of 10 Americans can use is critical. But I think really one of our big goals, higher paychecks. Look, they've been stagnant for more than a decade. America has fallen behind all of our competitors. There's a reason our jobs continue to move overseas. And so keeping more of what you earn, having a bigger paycheck, just having a simpler, fair, flatter tax system, that's what Americans actually deserve.
Okay, now, so I see conservative Republicans getting in your way. How will you satisfy them?
Yeah, see, Bill, I see just the opposite, where they're all in on tax reform. The bolder, the better. In the framework that we arrived at with President Trump, in the Senate tax riders is just that Reagan-style reforms that will vault America from nearly dead last among our global competitors into that lead pack and dramatically, eliminate a bunch of the special interest provisions and loopholes so we can lower rates for everybody. So we're getting very strong support, frankly, from conservative Main Street Republicans and moderates.
Okay. Now, I've heard others say there's not enough in there for the middle class, but we'll see how the debate goes forward. Quickly on Obamacare.
Middle class is our top priority.
Democrats are going to villainize you on this issue. They're saying you're punishing poor people. You're taking the subsidies away from people who need the insurance or are most vulnerable. How do you now defend this move of last night?
Look, I think the president's decision was right. The courts have ruled it's Congress's constitutional authority to determine those payments, not the Obama White House and, frankly, not the Trump White House. So I think that we ought to help those who are trapped in Obamacare right now, but do it in a way that's temporary, that's legal, and most importantly, is part of a transition to a healthcare system that's actually more affordable. And it's based on what our families need, not on what Washington needs. So I think the president made exactly the right call, and now it's Congress's job to make the right call
to get it done. The two big moves this week, you know, the state lines being erased, one could argue, and now the subsidies. We'll see how it plays out. You're in Texas. Yeah. Harvey took a wallop to your state. I'm looking at a price tag here of $36 billion already. And that's not Texas. That's Texas, that's Florida, that's Puerto Rico likely. Some are saying that price could go as high as $50 billion. Now, how do we offset that with a Congress that's been so worried about spending for so long, sir?
Bill, it's a great question. Tell you, of that relief package, because FEMA's running out of money in flood insurance, about $15 billion of that will come to our Texas families waiting for their claims to be paid and to rebuild their homes. But in the price tag could go well over $100 billion because Hurricane Harvey itself was the largest natural disaster in American history. We've got hundreds of thousands of families and businesses still in distress. But the answer to your question is we really need to have some type of contingency fund, a disaster fund, where rather than just borrowing this money every time we see these disasters, we've really got a pool we've planned for, is ready for, and we can address these needs immediately.
Did you say $100 billion? Did I hear that correctly?
Oh, yeah, I have no doubt. I think Hurricane Harvey, look at the damage in Texas, Louisiana, and Florida. Then you add Irma, and then Maria's devastation. This is unprecedented, and so these numbers are going to get unprecedented as well, which is why I think it's really critical. Each of our states have a good, thoughtful plan where they are partners with us, both in Washington and at the local level as well. Any relief we give should be helpful, not wasteful, and just be tailored on what our communities need, not on what Washington needs, which is, as you know, sometimes happens in these disaster relief efforts.
Our best to all of them needing that help now. Thank you, sir, for your time, and we'll see you back in Washington real soon. Kevin Brady there in Texas.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Sandra.
A high-stakes announcement happening today. President Trump preparing to lay out the fate of the Iran nuclear deal and American policy toward Tehran. Will the U.S. take a more combative approach?
Also, Sandra, another twist in the mysterious Cuban sonic attacks. We now know what the noise heard by U.S. embassy workers there sounded like. How and why it caused brain damage to so many.
This is something we take extremely seriously. The investigation is aggressive. It is underway. It has not stopped. We will continue to look for the source and for the party that is responsible for this, and that's all I'm going to have on that.
We're now getting our first listen to what's believed to be a sonic attack against U.S. diplomats working in Cuba. The Associated Press obtaining an audio recording describing it as, quote, shrieking crickets with an electronic twang, end quote. State Department not confirming the authenticity of that tape, but they're saying they are still trying to get to the bottom of what happened in Havana.
In a small country like Cuba, where the government is going to know a lot of things that take place within its borders, they may have more information than we are aware of right now. But I want to be clear, the investigation is still underway. We don't know what is causing it, and we don't know who is responsible for it.
In total, more than 20 U.S. staffers injured in those attacks, suffering hearing loss and mild brain damage in some.
We are just hours away now from President Trump's announcement on the fate of the Iran nuclear deal. He is expected to lay out a tougher strategy on dealing with Tehran. Waleed Faris is a Fox News national security and foreign affairs analyst. Waleed, this is certainly this is a big day for the president. The deadline has been approaching. There's been a lot of speculation about the president's next move here. What will it be?
Well, first of all, what is very important for the public to understand is what is the game, what's the equation. Under the previous administration, the Obama administration, the U.S. signed off on a deal which would send to Iran a cash amount versus Iran stopping to developing the nuclear weapon. What Iran has been doing over the past 3 to 4 years is to develop all kind of other weapons, buying long-range missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, and also intervening in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, beyond, destabilizing, supporting Hezbollah. What the administration is trying to do now is to pressure Iran on the deal, but more important, pressure Iran to change behavior. Now, how will the Iranians respond? They're going to look at what the United States is going to do after the declaration by the president.
So you're reiterating what we have heard from the president, that Iran has not been acting within the spirit of this deal. He has called this a terrible deal. He said he wants to be done with it. He wants to tear it up, rip it up, send it away. However, he's not exactly expected to do that. He's going to have to recertify or decertify this deal, first of all, and then that kicks it to Congress. So then first of all, what is the president going to do as far as certifying the deal?
Well, there is a bigger game. Before sending it to Congress, knowing that Congress, both parties, have been very tough over the past many years on Iran, holding hearings and briefings and making declarations, and the previous administration didn't do much about that with Iran. Now the president is going to say, okay, this deal is not being very well implemented, and the Iranian behavior is not good, so you, Congress, needs to take an action. So yes, the ball will be in the congressional court.
So the White House has laid out some of the core elements of the president's new strategy on Iran ahead of that speech later today. Some of them: neutralizing Iran's destabilizing influence, including support for terrorism, revitalizing traditional alliances in the region, deny Iran all paths to a nuclear weapon. Are you seeing a much more combative approach that the United States is taking towards them?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the core of what the president will be talking about, you will see 2 to 3 very important things. Number one is that Iran is not trusted anymore. This regime is not trusted. More important, the nerve system of the regime, the Pasdaran, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, will be under the focus of the United States and of our allies. And speaking of allies, number 3, remember the president went to Riyadh. He met with 50 Arab and Muslim leaders. This is way different from what was the situation in the 90s. He has a much larger coalition. Even if the Europeans are going to be criticizing his position, he has much larger bloc in the region to work with.
In a quote laid out by the president at the top of this new plan, the president said it is time for the entire world to join us in demanding that Iran's government end its pursuit of death and destruction. How do you expect Iran to respond?
Iran will first of all rely on the Europeans. This is the tender part of the equation, telling them if the United States is going to do this, then your economic interests are going to be jeopardized. Number 2, obviously, they're going to rely on Russia and China and the Security Council. But more important, Iran has a lot of cards in the region to create instability, and this is the most worrisome part of what Iran can do.
The president's announcement coming up later today. Waleed Phares, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Moments from now, President Trump departs the White House. Major speech. You'll see it here live. The Conservative Values Voters Summit is underway, and it'll be the first time he speaks publicly after dealing a major blow to Obamacare earlier today. But next, Texas Senator Ted Cruz on that and his looming decision on the Iran nuclear deal. Talk to him about that live.
We're awaiting an important speech from President Trump about 30 minutes from now. He will be addressing the Values Voter Summit in Washington. It comes only hours after the president announced he is ending all cost reduction subsidies to insurance companies participating in Obamacare, a move Democrats are already calling sabotage and vowing to fight in court. The president tweeting this: Obamacare is a broken mess. Piece by piece, we will now begin the process of giving America the great health care it deserves. Joining me now for more is Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz. Good morning. Good to have you in
Good to be with
studio.
you.
It's always good to do it this way. All right, so let's start first with this decision happening overnight, scrapping these bailouts, as the president likes to call them.
Look, it was exactly the right thing to do. These are massive bailouts to insurance companies. The Democrats love that. I mean, one of the interesting things, one of the interesting consequences of Obamacare, the profits of insurance companies have doubled. In 2008, the top 10 insurance companies, they had about $8 billion in profits. In 2015, they had doubled to $15 billion. And so, of course, we shouldn't be bailing out insurance companies. And, one of the things that was also very clear, what the Obama administration was doing, writing billions of dollars of checks, was illegal. It was contrary. Congress hadn't appropriated the funds. So the president is doing the right thing. But it underscores the need in the Senate that we got to step up and deliver on our promise to repeal Obamacare, that it puts even further heat on the Senate. I think we're close, and we can't give up on it. We need to keep working until we get to 50 votes and deliver on that promise.
As a result of this move by the president, lawsuits, are they likely?
There may be lawsuits, but they're not going to win.
All right.
In fact, there has been a lawsuit against the Obama administration where the court ruled that the payments to the insurance companies were contrary to law. So the lawsuits, the Democrats are blowing smoke if they say they're going to sue.
All right, speaking of the Democrats, this is what Nancy Pelosi has to say about this move by the president. Listen.
It is a sabotage of the Affordable Care Act and, quite frankly, a real disservice to the American people, many of whom voted for him.
You know what? That actually wasn't as bad as the statement she and Chuck Schumer put out was, this is a spiteful act of vast, pointless sabotage leveled at the middle class.
You know, why is it that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer get really angry defending corporate welfare, defending billions in bailout for insurance companies, but they're not worried about the single mom who's had her hours forcibly reduced to 29 hours a week because of Obamacare? They're not worried about the working family whose premiums have skyrocketed. Average premiums have risen over $5,000 a year under Obamacare. This thing is collapsing, and we have got to lower premiums, expand consumer freedom, give more choice and more competition.
And this comes after the signing of that executive order by the president yesterday, and there was sort of this unlikely alliance that we could see with our own eyes between Trump and Rand Paul at that signing ceremony. And the president, he said, when you get Rand Paul on your side, it has to be positive, that I can tell you. Boy, he said. So, I mean, you have to remember, going back to the primaries, we were both there. There was some choice words that were exchanged between these two. Was that interesting for you to see that?
It has been an amazing journey. And I'm glad the president did what he did this week on Obamacare. He expanded association health plans, which to Rand's credit, he has been advocating for a long time. I've been advocating it for a long time. It's a positive step. What it means for folks at home is if you're in the individual market or small group market, it makes it easier to join an association, which lets you get in the big group market and drive down your premiums. And so I think that was a positive step. I'm glad the president did it. I just hung up the phone 5 minutes ago with the vice president, and I was conveying to him this morning that was a very good thing the president did, and it turns up the heat on Congress that the Senate, we got to do our job now and deliver. We got to deliver on Obamacare, and we got to deliver on tax cuts.
All right, so, Senator, I've got the Dow right over your shoulder. It's up 30 points today, sitting at a record high. There's so much anticipation that tax reform will get done by the end of the year. Will it?
I believe we will get it done.
But timing is everything. If we go into the new year, that changes things. Will it get done before end of year?
We have a couple of months at least of work to do. We're at the beginnings, the beginning stages of tax reform. There are a lot of negotiations and back and forth in the House and the Senate. I think we'll get it done. I think it'll be late this year or early next year. I don't know the exact timing.
Well, we know that Speaker Paul Ryan's saying, hey, stick around over Christmas if we don't get this done.
And I think Paul's exactly right. I can tell you there are a bunch of senators, particularly what I call the Young Turks, which is the younger senators elected in the last 6-8 years, who are urging our leadership, let's work, let's stay in session, let's stay through weekends. If the Democrats are going to be obstructionist, let's push forward. Let's show the dedication to accomplishing our agenda that the Democrats showed to wreaking enormous havoc. And I think on tax reform, virtually every Republican wants to get to yes. And the impact on the economy, if we can do a big pro-growth tax cut, is a big, big deal.
But they're not there yet.
There are a lot of trade-offs in tax reform, and we're at the front end of those discussions. In the Senate, we got 52 Republicans. We've seen on Obamacare how hard it is to get 50 Republicans on the same page. I believe we can do it. I can tell you I'm spending every waking moment trying to bring Republicans together, trying to produce consensus and get the job done.
I want to talk about your state. The House just approved this $36.5 billion disaster aid bill. This obviously affects the people of your state after Harvey. By the way, how are things going?
You know, Texas is hurting. I mean, Harvey did enormous damage through a massive stretch. I mean, 250 miles from Corpus to Louisiana. We're coming back. I mean, it was inspirational to see Texans coming together and standing together and you know, in the middle of the storm. I actually think the story of Harvey will be the thousands of Texans that just went out and saved their neighbors, rednecks and bass boats.
It was amazing to see those stories. I spent a lot of time down in the state of Louisiana. People really came together after that.
And I will tell you, 2 weeks ago, Congress just passed legislation that I introduced with John Cornyn and Marco Rubio, and it's targeted tax relief at all of the people who were hit by Harvey and Irma and Maria. It lets people deduct the damages from the storm. It lets people withdraw from their retirement, their 401k and IRA without paying the penalties. It gives tax credits.
Much needed help
for employers that paid their employees during the storm.
And an update on Puerto Rico. The FBI is now investigating corrupt use of some of those government funds, with people withholding, mishandling crucial supplies. They're looking into that right now. We're limited on time, so I want to get to this Steve Bannon, because I need to get your response to this, Senator. Steve Bannon is planning to challenge every Republican incumbent except for you.
You know, there are a lot of battles in Washington. There are a lot of battles politically. I have, in my time in the Senate, stayed out of incumbent primaries. I'm going to continue to do that, and stayed out of the battles between players there. My focus is substance. We got a job to do. And you know what? There's a reason Steve is talking about doing it.
And let me tell everybody what he said, first of all. He said this on Fox News. There's a coalition coming together that is going to challenge every Republican incumbent except for Ted Cruz. This is obviously the former White House chief strategist.
Look, the reason people are so unhappy, they're ticked off. We've got Republican control of every branch of government, and we're not delivering. You know, if senators don't want to see those kind of challenges, there's an easy solution to that. Let's do what we said we would do. Let's deliver on tax cuts and repealing Obamacare. If we get that done, I'm a big believer good policy is good politics. We'll have a terrific 2018 election year if we cut taxes, repeal Obamacare, and the economy booms. If we don't get any of that done, 2018 could be a bloodbath. We control our own fate. Deliver results.
I've got to leave it there. Generally speaking, how are things for your party, Senator?
Hanging in the balance. It depends on if we do what we said we would do. If we honor our promises, they'll be great. If we don't, they'll be really lousy
Senator
for the
Ted
country.
Cruz. Great to have you. All right. Bill?
Interesting stuff, all of it. Thanks, Sandra. 18 minutes now before the hour. White House press corps got a surprise yesterday. Chief of Staff John Kelly at the podium, what he had to say about job security, his boss, the media, all that coming up. Stunning new developments in the scandal that is rocking Hollywood even today, where the scandal surrounding Harvey Weinstein will go next.
Guys, I'm not doing okay.
You're not?
I'm trying. I got to get help, guys. You know what? We all make mistakes. Second chance, I hope.
I just talked to the president. I don't think I'm being fired today. And I am not so frustrated in this job that I'm thinking of leaving. I would tell you, this is the hardest job I've ever had. This is, in my view, the most important job I ever had.
Wow, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, surprise visit there, taking the unusual step of addressing the White House press corps at the daily briefing. I want to talk about that with Juan Williams, Fox News political analyst and author of We the People. Steve Hayes, editor-in-chief Weekly Standard, Fox News contributor as well. 1 in a million. I'm so sorry for your Nats last night. I know you're a huge fan.
I am heartbroken. I imagine Hayes is too.
Yeah, probably. Steve, this man drips of credibility. Yeah. What do you think his presence yesterday did for this White House?
Yeah, I think it was a very good moment. And it was a very good day, precisely because this man drips of credibility. I mean, John Kelly is regarded by everybody who's worked with him and people who don't. Reporters in the room who are seeing and meeting him for the first time as somebody who's a man of integrity, somebody who's a patriot, somebody who's smart, somebody who's been through a lot. And so when he speaks with a sort of natural authority of a general. And I think it was very effective yesterday with the press corps making his case, needling the press corps in a slightly gentler way than President Trump had done. And, you know, look, the press corps loves a good surprise. When you sit through those briefings day after day after day, and it's boring, you want a good surprise, and you bring in John Kelly. They like that.
He's so matter-of-fact, and his humor is so dry. Juan, you sat in that room for years.
Yeah.
What did you think of yesterday?
I'd never seen anything like it because I've never seen the chief of staff do a command performance and suddenly, pretend to be the press secretary to do the briefing. So that's what surprised me out of the box. I agree with Steve that his demeanor was just terrific. I mean, I thought that he came across as relaxed and authoritative, in command of the situation. I think even in the way that he made the statement, "I'm not getting fired today," had sufficient qualification. Everybody got the joke. But to me, it was a reassuring vision and maybe even visage of him, because I think he is that kind of, as Steve said, a general. But I think, in a sense, the way that he responded to the idea of the press portraying the White House as chaotic was to say that, he's just trying to bring organization with a smile. I thought that was a nice way to handle it.
And the way he addressed the media, too. I mean, he's basically backing his boss when it comes to the charges of fake news, and he didn't back away from that. A little more from Kelly yesterday. Watch the secretary here.
Congress is an extremely complicated, it's designed to be an extremely complicated, slow-moving part of our government. There are 100 or whatever, 100 members of Congress that look to their states, have their own political baggage to deal with, and they're not always reliable on every vote to vote the way that the president or Mitch McConnell wants to vote.
So there you go, dealing with the troubles you have of getting a major piece of legislation passed. And I don't know what happens on this tax issue, but we'll all see in time. I thought Ari Fleischer had a great soundbite. He said there's been a pot of boiling water that needed to be cooled down. Steve, I guess mission accomplished in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, General Kelly has come in and he has put in place a new system, and he made a joke about it yesterday. He said, well, you know what, I'm supposed to control Donald Trump and settle everything down. No, but you talk to people in the White House, and I think it's a much more disciplined system than before, in part because Donald Trump respects General Kelly as much as he does. I think that's probably helpful. You saw there in the clip that we just played some pretty smart diplomacy, too, because anytime you're asked about Congress, the natural inclination is to beat the heck out of them. They're at 9% or 13%, depending on the polls. But he knows he's got to get a job done, and he's going to be a key part of particularly this tax reform package. John Kelly's talking to people on the phone all the time, and he's going to have to push it through. He doesn't want to alienate them.
I wonder if we see more of him. Juan, would you take that or not, quickly?
Yeah, I thought he was very effective. In fact, I thought that the reporters in the room, as you were talking about, Bill, I think they'd be delighted if he would come in more often. But it was a command performance. Yep. That's all it was.
Said the hardest job I've ever had.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that, can you, fellas? Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Bill.
Sandra.
We are just minutes away now from President Trump speaking at the Values Voters Summit in Washington. We'll bring that to you live as it happens.